worse. My anxiety was constantly like, well, what if I have this? People are gonna look at me like I'm crazy.
It is a crisis facing our kids at school.
I'll be up until like 3 a.m. on TikTok, just like researching.
And it's all in their heads.
And you were self-diagnosing. Were you diagnosed with any of these? Never.
How a search for answers could make things worse.
Too many people can be impacted by one person's opinions or actions for it to be completely unchecked.
And how Bay Area students provide a safe space for their peers.
This is CBS News Bay Area with Elizabeth Cook.
I'm Anne Makovec in for Elizabeth today, and we are just days away from the first day of school. A lot of students are going to be struggling with more than just homework. Things like depression, anxiety, and loneliness, they can all take a toll, and parents might not even know about it. Today, we're going to be talking with the doctor about how to help your kids and hearing from a Bay Area student who is on a mission to support others. There has been a lot of talk about social media and the potential impacts on our kids' mental health. Well, today, the Justice Department announced it is suing TikTok. It says the app broke the law by allowing children under 13 to create accounts without their parents' consent. That is a violation of the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. The lawsuit also says parent company ByteDance did not remove their information when their parents asked them to. TikTok says it disagrees with the allegations. 1 in 6 Gen Zers say they use TikTok every day and increasingly as a search engine looking for advice. National consumer correspondent Usher Karashi exposes the potential dangers posed by some so-called influencers and the unlikely social media star who's trying to set them straight.
Social media therapy, it's trending. On TikTok, the hashtag mental health has been searched more than 67 billion times.
If you've got ADHD, autism, or you have ADHD,
let's talk about suicide awareness.
This time has been super difficult for all of us.
The search became a serious problem for Samantha Fridley.
Originally, it was more, I was just looking for like mental health advocacy. It turned into diagnosis.
As a high schooler who was already seeing a therapist for anxiety and depression, Fridley watched countless videos of influencers sharing thoughts on mental health conditions and says TikTok flooded her feed with hundreds more.
It made it a lot worse. My anxiety was constantly like, well, if I have this, then like, what if I have this? People are gonna look at me like I'm crazy.
Soon she started to believe she was bipolar, had borderline personality disorder, and ADHD. According to one analysis of popular TikTok videos about ADHD, 52% were deemed misleading.
It just got to a point where I was losing sleep because of it. I would be up until like 3 a.m. on TikTok, just like researching.
And you were self-diagnosing. Were you diagnosed with any of these? Never.
The videos in her For You feed were picked for her by TikTok's unique algorithm, based on what she had searched, shared, and liked. In a recent study, researchers posed as 13-year-old users. Searching and liking mental health videos, they say TikTok pushed potentially harmful content on average every 39 seconds. Within 2.6 minutes of joining the app, some of the teens were shown content about suicide.
And this one got only 39,000.
Enter Dr. Ina Kanievsky. She may not look like your typical influencer, but this professor at San Diego Mesa College has become TikTok famous, with more than 1 million followers. She's done it by debunking mental health misinformation, one video at a time.
I saw a TikTok that said if you talk to yourself, you're showing signs of mental illness.
If you've been talking to yourself, that is actually a trauma response.
Can we not over-pathologize normal behavior?
Yes, you can give people advice based on your experience as long as you're clear that that's where you're coming from.
This is harmful.
Very often, these things are not presented that way. They're not presented as in this is my personal experience, but they are presented in like, did you know that this is what it is? Like if you are autistic, you do this. If you have depression, you do this. So it's not, it may be informed by their personal experience, but that's not what they're making it sound like.
While her videos have 36 million likes so far, Dr. Ina says she can't get TikTok to take down content she's flagged.
This is TikTok's Los Angeles headquarters. We asked to meet them in person to talk about their algorithm and the mental health content that's being pushed to young users, but they declined an interview. They did email us a statement saying they are testing ways to avoid recommending a series of similar content on topics, even though they admit that what you consume on the platform drives what you see.
They also wrote, quote, We strongly encourage individuals to seek professional medical advice if they are in need of support, and that they would remove misinformation that causes harm, regardless of intent.
These platforms are created as businesses to make money.
Robin Stevens spent years studying and critiquing social media platforms. Now she's advising Instagram.
Do the platforms need to do more to curate this?
Absolutely.
She's part of a group of experts now training influencers to create responsible mental health content.
Too many people can be impacted by one person's opinions or actions for it to be completely unchecked.
Samantha had to check out and detox from social media. She spent 56 days in residential rehab. No phone or TikTok allowed.
Do you still use it?
Yeah. Yeah.
But differently?
Yeah.
How do you use it now?
I don't use it for information anymore, or, you know, finding a diagnosis or finding like an illness. Like I use it for, you know, kind of like a form of like comedy. Like there's funny videos on there, so.
Several states have now joined in a combined federal lawsuit against social media platforms, including TikTok and Instagram. Lawyers representing young people claim the platform's algorithms have caused dangerous behavior, including eating disorders and even suicide. Facebook, YouTube, and Snap are also named in the suit.
Well, the young woman in that story says she beat the algorithm and reset her feed by searching for videos about K-pop and entertainment. It is a strategy teens can use if their feeds are flooded with negative posts. Watching, liking, and commenting on positive posts can help displace that negative comment, or they can just delete those accounts, start from scratch. Well, between social media and school and the lingering pandemic, there is a lot for our kids to deal with right now. Coming up, a doctor joins us to explain what we can do to help our students going back to school. Well, as kids get ready to return to the classroom, it can be a real mix of excitement and anxiety for students and their parents. Joining me now, Dr. Nicole Stelter. She is the Director of Behavioral Health at Blue Shield of California. Thanks for being with us this afternoon.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So not to date ourselves, but back to school, a little bit different these days. We didn't have social media to deal with. So how does that make things different for kids now?
Well, I had a chance to see the report right before this, and so many great things called out in that, great pointers, great information. And I think it just has opened up the world in some really positive ways for our kids, for adults, for everyone. A lot of great connections and learning about different things. But as the report pointed out too, it's also really a source of then comparing ourselves. And that's something that for sure we're kind of naturally doing as kids growing up. That's how we figure out where we fit in the world, what, you know, who we are, who we want to be. And then when you have such a broad slate of ways to compare your own life and your own way of being to all kinds of different content, that can get a little kind of out of whack and not in balance in a way that can be healthy. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot for kids to take in. It's a lot for us as adults to take in.
Sure.
Also, when it comes to getting back to school, there's a whole new routine to deal with, you know, for the loose living of summer, sleeping in and whatnot. How do you recommend easing into that transition?
I would definitely say start early. If you know, if you think about, as an adult, when you come back to work after being on vacation or something like that, and it's so much easier. You're not on the clock. You're not probably looking at your watch. You're not getting up. You're staying up late. You're not getting up early. Same idea about going back to school. Start early. Build in that routine in the morning that you know you're going to have to kick into once you start getting kids to school, especially when it's a new school, a new grade. So freshmen in college, freshmen in high school, maybe middle school, if it's your first year of middle school, or kindergartners or first graders. That's really important to kind of start what that morning routine is going to be like, start it early. And then what's the after school routine, bedtime and evening time going to be about? Getting that schedule kind of it's almost like a way to practice so that you're not all of a sudden having to switch overnight into a different kind of mode that can be really disruptive.
Speaking of switching modes, there's also, the pandemic factor that's still hanging over some kids who had spent years, in some cases, online learning and are still having trouble making the switch to normal school. How do you think that experience from a couple of years ago factors into kids going back to school now?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we're still looking at how that's going to continue to play out. I think for the most part, really looking at how that has that period of time really interrupted a lot of development, the things that are going on during those years when our kids are in school with their friends out in the world, right? And we have some catch up to do, and it's not just academic, it's psychological, it's social, it's emotional. All of those things are in catch up mode. And we're still looking at more specifically what that looks like. And each kid is still going to be a little bit different in how they're catching up, how they're essentially kind of plugging those gaps that they missed while they were out in COVID time. So it's a lot probably still to come in that space.
Now, I know a lot of parents are giving their kids options these days. Like if they do feel anxious, there's always, the homeschool option where you can take classes online and not even have to deal with the social pressures of in-person school. But what is your take on that?
Yeah, that's a hard one. There's definitely some positives to that. If you've tried you feel like you've kind of exhausted other options, and that seems like the only way to keep your kid kind of engaged or on track academically. I think that can be really helpful. I think wherever possible, making sure that there are still those opportunities for social connection, for recreation. I think the concern sometimes with something like homeschooling or with only online is the cutoff to social avenues, right? And those are really important for our kids. And again, not just about having friends and things like that. It's really about the balance of what we're doing as kids, and especially as teenagers, as we're growing up, is balancing ourselves and learning about our identity and ourselves from those interactions with the world around us and the people around us. And so we need that to be able to fully develop and grow. So it's really about a balance of that.
All right, makes sense. A lot of nuances here. Dr. Nicole Stelter, thank you so much. Coming up.
Thank you.
We are going to hear from a Bay Area founder who created a mental health hub for young people all around the world. Now, she says she's trying to work to save lives. Continuing our conversation about mental health and the challenges of going back to school for some kids, we had a chance to speak with an 18-year-old from San Jose who took part in a program that provides basically a mental health hub for young people. She told us how her goal is to tackle the stigma surrounding mental health.
Our motto is mental health for the youth, by the youth, just because all of our educational resources are created by youth. And we really embrace this youth-oriented approach to running our organization. We are all about honing the intersections of psychology and education to create psychoeducational resources for youth and educate them about their mental health. And we do so in a very culturally responsive approach. We have something called our Global Mental Health Hub, which I actually worked on and emphasized at the Ember Collective, where we provide all of our psychoeducational resources in 11 different languages, just to increase that sense of cultural competency when it comes to mental health care.
And here is what she has to say about what sparked her passion in combating mental health barriers facing young people.
That year, we received many emails from our district just kind of alerting us that we had lost students to suicide. And for me, that was just a huge, huge indicator that we need change. When you hear about that and you hear it's happening at your school, for me, I think it was a huge reality check with regard to how intense this mental health crisis really is. But of course, there's also that kind of humane response to it where it's like, wow, this is real. Like, I just lost a peer to challenges with mental health, and it just kind of becomes very gloomy, and especially so when you don't really see much being done to address the issues.
She is a member of DoSomething.org, and did she ever? Through that initiative, she created a website, UniteYouthMentalHealth.com. She's headed to Stanford in the fall to study psychology. We'll be right back.
This is Pix Plus. More of what you want, more often. More local news in the morning and the primetime edition. The only 8 and 9 p.m. news. With Devin Feely, Elizabeth Cook, Juliette Goodrich, and Sarah Donchie. Groundbreaking original storytelling from the KPIX newsroom. Plus Bear Politics, Project Earth, and weather like you've never seen. The primetime edition. Weeknights on the new Pix Plus. 44 Cable 12.
Well, thanks so much for joining us for today's conversation on youth mental health as students get ready to head back to school. And remember, help is always available. If you were in a crisis, just call or text 988. CBS Evening News is coming up next year on KPIX, and local news continues on our streaming service, CBS News Bay Area.